So, apparently HighGuard didn't fail because it launched into a packed genre with nothing new to say. No, it failed because of memes, because of rage bait creators, because the internet was mean, because gamers are toxic, because everyone else is the problem. And you already know where this is going because this is the oldest move in the book. When a game is winning, devs talk about gameplay. When a game is losing, devs start doing therapy talk. Suddenly, it's not about the core loop, it's about the discourse, it's about the culture, and we're all supposed to sit down and reflect on how our vibes impacted their quarterly numbers. Meanwhile, the servers are empty. Rest assured, there is a pulse behind this microphone, mostly because an AI wouldn't need this many coffee breaks to get through a script. That's the part that makes this whole thing so surreal. The game is basically a ghost town, and instead of a blunt postmortem, we missed, here's what we learned, we get a long-form victim arc. A big, dramatic statement about how toxic gamer culture murdered their baby. Like the baby didn't launch as a hero shooter in 2024, a year where the market is so saturated that even good games have to fight for oxygen. So, then, Josh Sobel drops the line that ragebait creators and memes are why HighGuard cratered from a massive peak to a tiny remaining player base. Okay, pause right there. If your game can be defeated by a meme, it wasn't alive. If your $1 million live service can be kneecapped by a Twitter user with an anime avatar, calling it Concord 2, then the meme didn't kill your game. The meme diagnosed it. The meme named what players already felt in their hands. Memes don't spawn out of nowhere and rewrite reality. They stick because they fit. They spread because they compress a shared experience into a punchline. When people are having fun, memes are celebration. When people aren't having fun, memes are a eulogy. And the Concord 2 label is basically a warning sticker. It's the internet saying, we've seen this pattern, big promise, thin identity, bland hook, fast decline. That's not sabotage. That's pattern recognition. Here's what's really happening, the internet isn't a charity. Nobody owes a studio engagement because they worked hard. Everyone works hard, that's not a selling point, that's the minimum. Your barista works hard. Your delivery driver works hard. If effort alone earned loyalty, every product would be a masterpiece. But players don't buy effort. They buy fun, they buy feel, they buy the moment where they go, one more match. And then it's 2 AM and they hate themselves, but they're smiling. And with HighGuard, that moment didn't happen for most people. So, they left. And when they left, the studio turned around and went, how dare you. The funniest part is watching defenders try to turn this into a moral argument. You only played 45 minutes. You didn't give it a chance, you review bombed it. Buddy, 45 minutes is enough time to know if a shooter feels bad, if the movement feels sticky, if the gunplay feels mushy, if the UI is fighting you. These things don't magically become great at hour 10. These are the fundamentals. And the less than an hour playtime complaint is an accidental cell phone. Because what you're really saying is, the first hour is so unconvincing that people bounce before they even settle in. That's not toxicity. That's your funnel collapsing. Then we get the review bombing is digital terrorism tier of cope. Losing a Steam rating because people think your game is boring is not terrorism. It's consumer feedback. If I buy a toaster and it explodes, I leave a bad review. That doesn't make me a terrorist. That makes me a guy with burnt toast and regret. And this is the key. A negative review is not an act of violence. It's not a coordinated attack by evil forces. It's the simplest transaction in the world. I tried it, I didn't like it, I'm telling the next person what happened. If that sinks your game, then the real issue is that the game couldn't survive honesty. Now let's talk about the Titanfall baggage, because this is where the studio really wants to have it both ways. They marketed pedigree. They leveraged history. They leaned into from the creators of your favorite games. And the moment players started making comparisons, suddenly it's unfair baggage. No, that's the ticket you sold at the door. You can't show up wearing a championship ring and then get mad that people expect you to play like a champion. You can't trade on legacy to get attention and then scold the audience for remembering the legacy. And the Titanfall 3 meme. That meme isn't just a joke, it's grief. People miss that style of shooter. People miss movement that feels clean. People miss games that feel like they were made by people who care about the craft, not by a committee trying to hit a trend line. So, when HighGuard shows up wrapped in we used to be those guys, players are going to project. They're going to hope. And if the game doesn't deliver that feeling, the disappointment turns into sarcasm, sarcasm turns into memes, and memes turn into the brand. And the worst possible reaction is to take the meme personally, to treat it like an insult that needs to be refuted, to argue on social media, to explain. Rule number 1 of the internet: never explain yourself to someone who's farming your reaction. The moment you start explaining, you're donating engagement. You're telling the algorithm, this is the conversation that matters. If you want the meme to die, you don't write essays about why it's unfair. You ship an update that makes it irrelevant. Because creators don't decide reality, they surf it. If the game is sticky, creators become free marketing. If the game is mid, creators become the narrators of its decline. Now let's be real about what happened with HighGuard. This wasn't a sudden catastrophe. This was a slow bleed. The kind where you check the numbers and they're down again and again. And in that window, studios have two choices: humble correction or defensive posture. HighGuard picked defensive posture. You had community managers in Discord doing passive-aggressive replies. Players ask for balance changes and they get our data shows it's fine. Players report friction and they get told it's a skill issue. Nothing kills a community faster than devs telling players they're playing wrong. Because it turns the relationship into a fight. It turns feedback into a courtroom. And once players feel like they're not being heard, they stop talking, they leave. They don't write essays about why they're leaving. They just go back to Apex, to Valorant, to Overwatch, to whatever gives them dopamine, without arguing with a spreadsheet. Then Reddit does what Reddit does. The roasting begins. Threads about things more popular than HighGuard right now. It sounds cruel, but it's not random cruelty. It's people processing disappointment through humor. Now someone will inevitably say, but the game had a hook. Sure, it had a hook. The hook was, we used to work on Titanfall. That's not a hook, that's a resume. A hook is what makes me queue again after I lose. A hook is what makes me think about the game when I'm not playing. Trust us, we've done cool stuff before is not a hook. The hook has to be inside the match. And from everything people describe, HighGuard's heroes didn't stick. That's fatal in this genre. A hero shooter lives and dies on identity. Players remember Overwatch characters instantly. Players can name Valorant agents and describe their vibe. But when your roster gets reduced to gun guy, drone girl, teleport dude, you've already lost where it counts. If players can't remember your characters, they can't form attachment. If they don't form attachment, they don't build community. If they don't build community, your live service becomes a revolving door. And in 2024, functional is not enough. Everyone is functional. You need addictive. You need sticky. You need that one thing that makes players forgive flaws because the core is electric. When that's missing, every flaw becomes a symbol. Every bug becomes proof. And every meme becomes destiny. Now let's talk about the reveal trailer, because this is where studios plant the seeds of their own downfall. Big cinematic, clean editing, pumping music, all vibe. No real match flow, no raw gameplay that shows how it actually feels minute to minute. And people fall for it because people want to believe. But vibe is cheap. Vibe is not netcode. Vibe is not hit registration. Vibe is not map flow. Vibe is the frosting, not the cake. So, players bought the promise. They logged in expecting a spiritual successor to something legendary. Then they got something that feels like it was designed by a committee of accountants. Something trend-chasing. Something late to the party. And when players didn't like it, instead of listening, the studio called them toxic. That's the part that torches goodwill. Because criticism of a product is not a character attack. Saying this isn't fun is not hate speech. Saying this feels mid is not harassment. Those are normal consumer reactions. And when you frame normal consumer reaction as moral failure, you don't just lose the haters. You lose the middle. You lose the fence sitters. You lose the people who would have checked back after a patch. Because nobody wants to return to a game where the devs publicly resent the audience. It's also strategically stupid. You need these people. Not as friends, as customers, as community, as the reason you can fund the next project. Calling them toxic because they didn't stick around is like a restaurant owner yelling at people for leaving after the appetizer. Congratulations, you just ensured they'll never come back. And the deeper irony is this: if HighGuard were genuinely great, none of this would matter. Memes would bounce off. Rage bait would fizzle. Negative coverage would get drowned out by players posting clips and saying, no, seriously, it's sick. Great games generate their own gravity. They bend the conversation. But mid-games don't do that. Mid-games get defined by the narrative because the gameplay doesn't overpower it. Mid-games become a lesson, a cautionary tale. So no, Josh, it wasn't the memes. It wasn't the creators. It wasn't the Reddit threads. It was the game. It's always the game. If it's good, people play it. If it's not, they don't. You can't lecture someone into having fun. You can't guilt someone into queuing. You can't blog post your way into a better core loop. And the final cherry on top is that this whole public meltdown is the worst possible exit. Instead of we learned, it's you did this. Instead of humility, it's resentment. Because here's what happens next. The game keeps bleeding. Matchmaking gets worse. New players bounce faster. The community shrinks into a bitter little pocket. Then the servers go offline. Then HighGuard becomes a footnote in a top 10 gaming disasters video. And the meme outlives the game. Not because the internet is evil, but because the internet remembers patterns. HighGuard becomes shorthand for another live service that tried to coast on pedigree and got mad when the audience compared it to the pedigree. So, if you're building a game and you're watching this like a horror movie, here's the lesson. Don't chase a trend that's already expired. Don't ship a hero shooter without a hook that hits in the first match. Don't treat feedback like a personal attack. Don't argue with trolls. Don't blame the audience for not buying something they didn't want. Take the L, study it, learn from it. Because the audience already moved on. They moved on quietly with their time. And silence is the loudest review you can get.